Sweet. Thanks. Cool. All right. So the first one is this new name, question mark. I see Giuseppe put it up, but I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yesterday I crunched the numbers, had a lot of fun with it because we had this like couple of alternative ways of calculating, the ranking, and it turns out they both lead to exactly the same ranking, which was really fun. And yeah, so the Bifrost seems to be by far the preferred option. So I guess next is to just make sure it doesn't mess up with anything like legally, or I don't know, check that there's no copyright problems or whatever. And then we move on with it, I guess. And the good thing is that if Bifrost doesn't work, I guess we can just drop to the second choice and then third. And by having used like a ranked system, we have a ranking, so we don't have to vote again. Yeah, that's it. The question marks are because yes, I saw some doubts on Slack about companies using the name. I'm not particularly concerned about it, just because I think there is a risk that any name we pick will have been picked by some remote company somewhere. It's more like how problematic it is for us, first from a legal standpoint, and then from a CEO in a way, like SEO, sorry, way. Like, is it gonna make it hard for people to find us or stuff like that? I don't know. I don't think so. But...
Well, I mean, once we are sure we have a clear top choice, which maybe we do, then I can reach out to LF Legal and they can, take a quick look at as far as trademarks, copyrights. I do think tomorrow when you and Andrew present Giuseppe to the governing board, they might have some input into this. I mean, those three are all, I think, quite viable. Yeah. I like Faros, maybe with a PH, maybe not. It's one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Very cool. Bifrost, my only concern with Bifrost is that I think that I guess there's a Marvel, more recent cultural reference there too, but the pronunciation of it is maybe it would be in the original, kind of Nordic, it would be Bifrost or something like that, which doesn't roll off the tongue generally, but but
it
just
just
cool.
Sounds more delicious, that's all.
Yeah. Bifrost, yeah. And then we discussed these three at the TSC call just before this, and someone mentioned that, okay, so Bifrost, it's a rainbow bridge connecting the realm of the gods to the realm of humanity. Which one's which? Is Cloud Foundry humanity, and Kubernetes is the realm of the gods? That would be my inference, but I don't know exactly. So I like the metaphor of the bridge, but just we should talk through these things. And Korifi is I think more generic, less metaphor. It's a peak, cool, okay, that works. I don't think we'll have any problems with that. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know who has the last word on this. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, we have voted and we have a ranking, but
yeah, I hope we can reach a consensus and but then there's also the distinct possibility that what we decide is the number one, there will be a legal or trademark issue that pops up,
So do we ask legal to analyze them all and give us a result?
Yeah, I can do. I can ping legal today. I actually need to. I followed up about something I need to re-ping them about. So I can ask LF Legal to look at these 3 names and be what roadblocks might there be for these.
And I guess we're refraining from using the name until this is clarified, I guess.
Yeah, I would definitely think so. Yeah, I would definitely. We want to talk to LF Legal, and I think we should talk to the governing board tomorrow when you and Andrew present to them on just the state of the project, and then I mean, assuming that there's not going to be the initial release in the next 2 weeks, then I don't think there's any rush. Like it would be very nice to have this name set before we do the initial release, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise,
Yeah, agreed.
and some strategy around how that's going to be, marketed. And I think meeting tomorrow, shine a lot of light on that. So.
Yeah, we could even rename the repository
Yeah.
before that. So that when we release with the new name.
Cool. Well, this was exciting. And thanks for your takes on the 3 options, Chris. that was interesting too. Cool. All right. So next is from Ram. Anything we can start to demo yet or document?
Hey everyone, yeah. So I was just asking from the perspective of now that the project is gathering some steam and we have some potential names and things like that. One of the things that I've not seen being mentioned a lot of is some installation docs or like a getting started or a quick start or something like that, which I guess is kind of imperative as we go so close to launch. So if there is like an initiative there, or if that needs to be picked up and get done, then I'm more than happy to get on board with that and help out in some form or manner, because it'll be really useful, I guess. And even if so I think the document could be the first step, and some demos that can follow up on that documentation and go on like the foundation YouTube channel and other places. I think would be useful in getting that initial traction. So if there's any efforts happening there, or if there's anything that needs to be bootstrapped, I'm happy to step in and help.
I guess we have the scripts, but yeah, I don't think we have anything that is extremely user friendly, do we? So we could come up with
a deployment.
some chores to do it.
Yeah, we have talked about this, that we don't really have an official way to deploy. There's a dev script that deploys it. We really haven't thought about this so far, so I guess it's an open discussion. We don't really know what tools we're going to use. Is going to be like right now it is customized. It's probably not going to stay like that. Maybe it can become YTT with what was this other thing? K-build. Maybe it can become Helm. We don't really know. Maybe we should have I think it will. It has to be a story, right? Not a chore even, because that's very much user facing. I guess we can have that. I don't know, like in terms of capacity, how soon we're going to be able to handle that.
I think
definitely an important thing.
Maybe in the interest of getting a beta out with what's there, we just document the customized experience. If we need to change it later, then that's beta life.
Yeah, and I mean there is a script that does it. So as complicated as it is, it's doable because the script does it. So if we turn the script into words in a way, that's it for now. And then if it's terrible, we try to make it better. But we could think of just documenting what we have for now.
It is kind of documented. It's just I think the documentation is confusing and maybe a little bit incomplete. So I think the bulk of it is documented. It's just it doesn't feel like the process that you would have to go through in order to use that documentation is feasible or sensible, right? So I'm not sure. It kind of comes down to a question of like, how much effort do we want to spend making it easier to document arbitrary Kubernetes clusters. Like right now, if you want to deploy on kind, it's pretty straightforward. If you want to deploy on anything else, it's cryptic.
Maybe it's enough. Maybe kind is enough. Like if people want to try it, maybe it's enough to tell people, you know, you run the script to get a kind cluster and you can play with the thing. If you want to deploy on a different cluster, you have to kind of reverse engineer the script.
Yeah, because like one of the questions is it worth demoing, even though the docs and installation is subpar, which I like personally think it is because it's very demoable right now. And then like maybe that's just a caveat that we mentioned, like this is all still being worked on and in flight.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to run demos from your machine, you can run the script, get a kind thing. Like I do that all the time to do acceptance on the stories, for example. I just install the thing and consume it.
I wonder how
I can
hard.
CF log and CF push can do those things.
I wonder how hard it would be to deploy this to some sort of real cluster. What would be the main things that don't work? Because like Ram said, he would be happy to like help with this one. So maybe like if maybe Ram, if you take the script and like try to do it, we can probably help. Like you can write in the public channel. We can help with whatever comes up. Because as I said, I don't know in terms of bandwidth if we're going to be able to handle this pretty soon adequately. So maybe that's good workout.
Yeah.
I mean, just oh, go ahead, Ron. Yep.
No, I was just going to say I'll follow public channel for I guess links to whatever documentation is there, and also share results of my runs. Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I think I had to deconstruct some of the steps in like the install dependencies script. This was maybe a little bit out of date now, but I've been able to get this deployed successfully to GKE with all the dependencies. Again, with just pretty manual use of the assets and customize. I'd also set up my installation to install everything with the K-app so that I could know what owned what and what was stomping on things. But even that wouldn't necessarily be required if you're just using kubectl to apply some YAML files as well. So, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. But I think it's going to look more attractive if we do at least, I mean, it doesn't have to be a one-click install of a file, but if we have a reasonable set of steps for someone to say, okay, here's a release of this. I'm okay pulling the images from Docker Hub or wherever, or GCR public registry, but like, you know, give me a fairly prescriptive set of steps to follow to install this on a Kubernetes cluster. I feel like that honestly is going to be somewhat easier to understand and trust, especially when you're trying something out, than, you know, maybe a deploy on kind script is kind of attractive because that should be a throwaway cluster anyway. I wouldn't have a lot of compunctions about that, but I also wouldn't rely on that being the only cluster type somebody has. So if we have time to take a pass just to say like, okay, here's the steps to go through to install the dependencies and then install the resources of the actual CF-On-K8s project at a particular set of images and resources for a configuration, then that sounds appealing, like a good minimum to accompany that first beta.
I mean, in some sense, the CF-On-K8s installation was also a bit hacky because there was quite literally a script named generate values for the YAML file, and that was under a folder named hack. And so it would cough up a warning saying, hey, make sure you're not using this on production. This is no way good and stuff like that. So, but then I think it eased a lot of the installation process. And like Eric mentioned, there was a finite number of steps for anybody who was trying this to take from going from not having CF to having CF. So I think if we're able to repeat something of that degree of like comfort, I think we should be good. But yes, there should be a foolproof set of instructions is what I'm thinking. Even if we are like beta or pre-beta or whatever early stage we are at, it still, I think, would benefit greatly from having that kind of documentation. So anyhow, I'll follow up with folks on the public channel and start to put something together, and folks can share whatever they have on the channel, and let's go from there. Thanks.
Cool. Next one up is from Phil. V0.1 beta milestone progress.
Yeah, and I threw this on, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, I just wanted to check in and see how people were feeling. I heard, Georgi, you made a comment around, you know, being a little, I don't know if under-resourced is the right way to look at it, but, you know, you got a few priorities going on. But then also just checking in on the stories that we need to write around getting stuff ready. Do we feel like those should be added to the 0.1 milestone as well, like once they're created? And I just kind of want to have kind of an open discussion and see how people are feeling about the 0.1 and if there's anything maybe we're missing or we should be doing on top of what we've already planned out.
Yeah, so currently it says, GitHub tells me the milestone is 62% complete. There is 15 stories open in the milestone. I know for a fact that I'm missing at least a couple. I think the space manifest endpoints are still missing from those stories. And the reason is, I think those are quite complex endpoints. They're not like, there's no like one-to-one. It's not just one code on one resource. It's more complex than that. Plus, yeah, these stories about documentation could probably fit in there, which means maybe there is another, I don't know, 5 stories to add, I don't know, 10, I don't know, go figure. But it feels like we are at least halfway through. So it's not that bad.
Cool.
They are all relatively small stories, but like I'm a bit nervous with like writing a gazillion stories up front and then letting them sit for a long time. I like to write them as I go, but that also means that the milestone never looks like it's not very realistic until I'm done. But I think most stories are there, so I don't think there's many other stories I need to add. At least for the authentication stuff. The doc stuff might be an extra story, just to have a pair to go through the install docs, fix them, PR the results, maybe. That's it.
Cool. No, that makes sense. I kind of just want to get a sense for how everyone was feeling on it.
Sounds good. Next one up is also you, Phil. Testing proposals.
Yeah, I put this one on here just because we have the Ginkgo testing style guideline proposal was technically due yesterday, so I wanted to just check on, is it good? Do we need to have more conversation around it? Do we have that here? Where are our next steps? And then I threw parentheses because I think there's going to be another testing proposal that comes up, and I wasn't sure when we would see that one or if we had thoughts around that. So
this one, I guess, I don't think there are very big arguments there. I think it's pretty much, there are a couple of small things that are pretty much up to taste, I guess. So I guess we'll be able to have a consensus there. I think the deadline was yesterday, but we should be able to wrap it up pretty soon. And the next one is a bit more tricky because we wanted to have a conversation with Mant, who's not back yet. And we have lots of conversations here, and we would probably like to drive it by example, like open some draft PRs, but we don't really know where to start because we are missing some feedback maybe from the US side of the team. Like, for example, we seem to have very different opinions with regards to our so-called E2E tests, which are pretty much acceptance tests for the API level. So we are writing them and we're kind of liking them because they're exercising the deployment, the wiring, all that kind of stuff. They can catch nasty things. They have called nasty things for us in the past, and people in the other time zone are not quite fond about them. Like, I guess we need to flesh this out a bit more so that we know how to proceed, because it's like we're not really sure what to propose, basically what to write in a proposal like that. The Ginkgo style guide was a very easy one. It's not controversial. So I don't really know how we proceed. We talked about this again, like it comes up literally almost every day here. So I think, like, given that not the whole team is available here, maybe we should start a Slack thread and just try to communicate that way. That's currently my best bet, I guess. Because otherwise we're just waiting. And in the meantime, as it became evident from some PRs, we're unsure what to do. And it's not very good to opt out of testing while this is happening. So I guess, yeah, I guess the essence of what I want to say is we have to try and communicate more about this. Like, have to flesh out why people don't like the E2Es, and if people don't like the E2Es, we can probably get rid of them, but then we'll have to find ways to solve the problems that we believe they're solving, is also, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And I think maybe an offline, not offline, but yeah, an async channel of communication might work. Not sure if it will work, but we can try, because FaceTime is really, really minimal. And I given how much time we're like discussing these things in the team, yeah, I wouldn't see how it will fit in 30 minutes. So that's my
that's
rant
fair.
on it.
I'm nervous about sending it back to Slack just in general, because I think while we don't have the whole US team here, like we do have a decent amount of representation. And I would love to at least get some conversation on this started, because I think I'm feeling your concern and just being like, okay, are we going to talk about it? Like, when do we get to talk about it? I mean, this is our 30 minutes at the moment to talk about it. I mean, for the most part. So, I don't know if anybody on has strong opinions or wants to talk through it, or we want to get to the next topic and then we can come back to it. I'm open. I want to make sure we're having the conversation. You know what I mean?
I guess speaking just for myself, I don't have a particular objection to end-to-end testing. I think that's ultimately where we need to land. We should have happy path acceptance tests that test the whole system threaded through. I think what feels a little heavy right now is just the duplication of testing, right? Like, you implement one little endpoint, it takes 15 lines of code, and then you add 4 different flavors of test, each of which needs its own setup to do whatever the faking is or not faking, as the case may be. So that's feeling a little heavy right now, and I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, it kind of feels like we spend a lot of time testing. Maybe, I guess, because we're picking up some of these authentication stories and talking to one another in the context of authentication, it feels like we're writing a lot of tests to test the unauthenticated case in like 3 different ways, which feels very heavy, right? Like, if you tested it in unit and you tested it in this integration, you really need something to test it from there to there. And to me, it kind of feels like maybe part of the problem is that the actual implementation is fractured and not consolidated. So we might feel better about fewer kinds of tests if we were using the same code to capture and report the errors, right? we wouldn't necessarily need to exercise that code through every endpoint. That's just, I'm sorry if I'm rambling a little bit. I'm just getting kind of a stream of consciousness as I've been sort of musing about this.
My point of view, the integration tests are some very strange kind of a beast, because if you think about it, you are testing again through the HTTP API. In the end, you're sending HTTP requests. So the question is, why are they different from the end-to-end test that we already have? And the answer is that end-to-end tests are running against a cluster, while the integration tests are running against the test-env environment. And here is the big problem. The test-env environment is just its CD and the kube API server running. You don't have the luxury of having controllers to test asynchronous stuff and so on and so forth. And you may argue that their big advantage is speed, but if you factor out a real cluster creation, I'm not sure that they're much faster than end-to-end tests. Also, currently integration tests are doing something quite minimal, but if you are going to enrich them in future, they're going to become slow as well.
Yeah,
So
my
what I'm
main
trying
concern
to say is that, yeah, sorry, Giuseppe.
No, go on, please finish.
So what I'm trying to say is that integration tests and end-to-end tests are pretty similar, but we should, from my point of view, we should be testing against the real thing. The test environment has some limitations that have hidden problems in the past. And probably the workflow would be when you start creating a story, work on a feature, you start with an end-to-end or integration or whatever you want to call it test, see it failing, and then go back to the implementation. You just quick and fast unit test with mocks and so on and so forth. And when you think you're done, you just run the end-to-end or integration or whatever test again, just to verify that you in the end have implemented whatever needed. And basically you're done.
Yeah, I guess that's just the way we've.
Integration tests are the right tool to test drive your implementation. I'm done.
Yeah,
sorry.
This is basically the way we've been used to work, I guess, on the previous projects as well. Where like, I think that my problem with the integration test is that if you think of the system as a composition of smaller components, to me, the only boundaries that make sense to test are either the boundaries on the individual smaller components or the whole system as a whole, considering the user interface as the boundary, if you see what I mean. Like, but if you just, I don't see the point in testing a subset of the components. Because like if I'm testing the handler plus the repository plus a little bit of Kubernetes, then I might as well test the whole thing, you know. But I can test the handler. I can test the handler by itself, mocking the repositories, mocking everything, and I can test the repository maybe with testdem for speed instead of a real repository. But like arbitrary composition of components don't help me in coverage, and usually they're hard because like you have combinatory explosion of paths across those components, and it's very hard to cover all cases through them. So that's usually I never use them. So I never write what's called integration or integrated tests. There's even a very nice talk by J.B. Rainsberger about how he's very strongly opinionated against them. He calls them a scam. I will link them. I will link it to you just because it's a fun talk. But yeah. So that's, but I see that many people use them for driving stuff for test drive, and like I don't want people to feel like they have to test drive via end-to-ends because it's of course not feasible, and also if people are not confident at test driving with mocks, then there must be a reason, right? So I don't know. how we get out of this. But like if it were me, I would just get rid of the integrations. Like they don't fit in our testing model.
Are we primarily talking about the API shim here or the controller side?
No, we don't. We pretty much never touch the controllers, so I can't really comment on the controllers. I think I don't even know how the code base looks like.
Because I think that distinction might also be affecting how we talk about it too. Because like in my opinion, the integration or the inf test ones are like infinitely more valuable on the controller side, just because of how those things work. And it is mostly the contract is the controller and the Kubernetes API and less of these collaborators. So like, I think if we can like at least say that like it's fine to keep those inf tests as like how we test drive the controller stuff, that would be good. I just wanted to add that to make sure we're all thinking about this the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean I think in Irini we've done without them and use different techniques. But I can see the pros of just testing them because they're kind of coupled with how Kubernetes works. Like the whole reconciliation loop is that. I mean, technically, you're implementing an interface. You should be able to do without env test, but if you do with env test, I can see how it's easier. For the API, I think we have fewer reasons to use them. Also, like going back to env test, like env test was designed exactly for the use case you've mentioned, which is testing these controllers. It was not designed for testing what we are testing them. Like the way we are using env test for the API, that's not the use case of env test, right? Which is why we're suddenly finding ourselves lacking things. Oh, the hooks are not there. Oh, the controllers are not there. Stuff is not there. Let me add more stuff. And suddenly you have this like Frankenstein, which I'm not really happy with. For controllers, I think they make a lot more sense because it's like, okay, the controller is basically, reading and writing from etcd via the API, but more, and like you want to test that the reads and writes from etcd are correct. And the events that get triggered from those reads and writes are correct. And I think that makes a lot more sense because that's what mtest was born to do. I think which is why you get it for free when you generate a controller with what is it called? That generator thing.
Builder.
Yeah, Q builder. Yeah. So that might be part of our problem. Like we may be also overstretching it a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even if we did it without mtest, like it's two different issues. Like one is mtest is inadequate, but like let's say we decided, okay, let's get rid of mtest. Let's do the same integration tests with a real Kubernetes API, and we have some of those in Irini. I would still not like them because they're integrated. Because I don't like to test the handler and the repository in one test. I test the handler with a fake repository, and I test the repository with a real API. And then I don't need to test them together because the end-to-ends already test that, right? So that's my issue is with the integrated tests mostly. Env test, I think, is a kind of separate issue, which can all agree on because like it's been just not very comfortable to use. Also, the hitting the handlers with via the server HTTP interface, I think that's another. Like the handler interface is also a pain because you can't use a real HTTP client. There's so much boilerplate just building up requests. So these are like at least 3 separate symptoms that make those tests. I just don't like them. Every time I see one, I'm like, oh, this is. I feel like the value of this thing, it doesn't pay for itself. There's so many lines of code, not necessarily worth it. I see the value in test driving, but like from a testing perspective, given I don't use those for test driving, it's hard for me to see them as worth keeping.
And the thing exploded just when we noticed that the fakes were wrong in the handlers to do with error processing. So then we added a lot of stuff in there to tie the two together quickly. I mean, you could put the same tests in the end or the acceptance test, but if you're doing something like an app which requires KPAC to go and process a build, you got to wait a minute for it to do it. So the tests are incredibly slow, and you don't want to go and do 4 different error cases on that. But maybe that was just a mistake, and we should just be careful with the fakes and the handlers and check they do actually reflect what comes back from the repositories, and then those tests can go.
Yeah, there's always a risk with mocks, but like also there's no way to prevent developers from writing the wrong test. Like it's just a simple, you just wrote the wrong test. Mocking the thing wrong is another way of writing the wrong test or the wrong assertion or doing the wrong
keep an eye
setup.
open for that. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been looking at the error stuff today anyway. We've put a draft PR out. It's moving a lot of the error management into a couple of single places. So maybe that'll help a bit. And that's a work in progress.
Makes sense. So I'm not hearing a whole lot of disagreement in general on tests. Are we missing a big question, or?
So we keep, people were saying like, yeah, we must wait for Matt to come back because he's got some very strong opinions on that. So anyone got an idea what they are?
Yeah, I don't think we need a hard blocker on Matt. I think maybe posing, like, I think we should plan on discussing this next week at our sync meeting again, like just like carve that out. And then maybe the Slack convo is still good just for folks who aren't here to like if we frame it like these three types of tests, end-to-end, unit, and the inf test integration, and like what do you like and dislike about them. Maybe that's a way some people can get some thoughts down there, and maybe Matt can contribute to that async.
Yeah, I think the big question mark is really, so we've heard a fair amount of agreement that the integration tests could go. The follow-on question to that is, okay, so what do you do with the negative testing that was in that suite? Like, a lot of people feel like it's an anti-pattern to put negative tests into your acceptance test suite. I mean, partly for the reason that Karen just
Yeah, that was our first so our first feeling was like we shouldn't put them just because it's going to make it's just going to lead to so many more tests, and the problem is it's going to get slow. I guess that's the problem. But like maybe it's fine. Like maybe we should worry when they do get too slow, if you see what I mean. Like I don't know how many endpoints we want to test and how many errors we want to test. Maybe if you test all endpoints, all possible errors, then it is too much.
That's
so again, like maybe you don't, and maybe, but because the thing is, to me, the unit is just as good as the integration. Like from a confidence point of view, if I don't test it in the end-to-end, I'm happy with just testing it in the unit. Like in the end, I'm testing an if, right? So like that if is the same if in that I'm exercising in the unit and I'm exercising it in the end-to-end. So it's not like I think there is this perception that the unit test is not reliable. It's just testing a much smaller piece of code, but if that contains the logic that you want to test, it's perfect. It's extremely fast, and it doesn't flake. So even if we just tested positives in the end-to-ends and just tested the negatives in the units, would be fine. I don't think the integration gives us more confidence. Yes, that there is that mocking problem, but again, just need to keep an eye out for mocks. Just make sure that the mocks don't lie. Unfortunately, there's not much to do about that.
On the other hand, the errors are also part of the API that we're building, so there are features.
Yeah, it is true. Like if
same rank of features as the rest of the API, like input arguments. For example, those nasty error codes and error messages, and yeah, they're part of the API. We should have tests for them.
Let's say we one day decide, okay, we're gonna rewrite this thing from scratch. Like literally, we delete the repository and we rewrite it from scratch just by leaning on the end-to-end tests. Then it would be nice if the end-to-end test actually covered the API well enough that we would be able to do that. Or like if, let's say someone comes with an alternative implementation, it would be nice to just point the tests at that implementation and say, okay, this implementation actually behaves reasonably well. It passes the test. So I agree that those errors are part of the behavior of the API. It's nice to pinpoint them with the API. I think it's just a trade-off with cost. If they were cheap, I'd be super happy to just have them there. It's just they're not cheap. Like, especially if you have repeating the setup at every test, Maybe we can get clever with that. I don't know. But like if you have to push an app for every test and it's like successful push, failed push because of error 1, error 2, error 3, error 4, we're pushing 5 apps. Every app takes 2 minutes to push. That's easily 15 minutes for the CF push test, and multiply that for 10 or 15 endpoints, and suddenly we have a test with it.
I mean, my mind goes
Lasts
to CATS.
for an hour or something. Yeah.
You know, and CATS isn't even that exhaustive of testing all of those kind of error cases, but it still takes a really long time and it's very painful and flakes a lot.
Yeah, CATS uses the CLI, so I think we have an edge because we don't like the CLI tests that we've discussed are even a different thing. I think just by exercising the API instead of the CLI, we make things slightly faster and slightly more robust. But yeah, there is a risk that we get into CATS territory. I don't know. It's this classic trade-off of the testing pyramid, blah blah blah. Like, if we could cheaply test everything by end-to-end, I think we would do it because they're the most reliable tests. But so we'll have to reason in terms of cost versus benefit. There's no way around it.
One thing that we have recently discussed is like what happens if we have a long-lived cluster, as we did in Concourse, because like these days we have to deploy cleanly every time, which is probably at least half of the time spent running these tests. So we could experiment with that. I don't know how that will play with actions, but maybe we can think in this direction to make them cheaper.
Is there a better build we can do as well? We're pushing the node example from CATS at the moment. Is there a quicker one? Compiled app or something? I don't know.
It needs to be something that I guess exercises the whole build flow, but I guess there's no way not to do that.
The node has to go and pull in all the NPM stuff, so that takes a while. So is there some
Maybe some
K-pack
static
thing that's
website
quicker?
thing?
Yeah.
Is it Nginx or something where you just push an index.html? It doesn't have to be built. It just creates a container with Nginx. And yeah, I think once we start feeling the pain, we can get creative, and you know, maybe there is setups that we can share between tests carefully, not to avoid false negatives or whatever. And saving on, you know, setup by pre-deploying their cluster, maybe creating a new namespace every time, like a new top namespace or something, so that there's still good isolation between different runs, stuff like that.
You'll be able to push a precompiled binary with a proc file.
That if we halve the time taken by a CF push, we're probably gonna do a whole lot of pushes, so that saves us a substantial amount of time.
Yeah. Does Catnip work that way? Like, is that precompiled and pushed it with the binary build pack in CATS?
That's at least as a list of you. I think it has Dora, maybe. Then it has this node app.
Yeah. Anyway, just one thing to consider if you're looking to optimize those. It would still engage enough of the build pack flow.
I guess it'll still be faster. I think in general, though, like subsequent pushes of the same app should be faster because K-pack should be caching. So I don't know. I have a feeling like it's not going to be a huge speed up regardless.
Like if we sat down tomorrow and wrote a proposal consisting of, let's get rid of the integration tests, let's reintroduce all the error checks in the end-to-ends, let's keep just the units and the repository env test tests. Like, would that be tragic? Would some people get really mad? Would that be like the diplomacy failure, or like, can we do it and chat on it? Like, that is it, would that be extremely polarizing or not? If not, I think we should just do it, and then I guess I think the proposal is the best way, the best place where to have the conversation, just because we can chat, well, like we can comment on the thing itself instead of doing on Slack or somewhere else, where like, I guess it's harder to talk about something without having it in front of you. If you do it on the document itself, maybe we can put graphs, stuff like that. That maybe the
there's other things to
conversation
talk
is a
about
bit
as well,
easier.
isn't there? Like handlers tests incorporate presenters and things like that at the moment. So perhaps they could be separated out so the JSON concerns can live in their own tests. And that might, some of these handler tests are quite large at the moment, might help.
I feel like that could be a separate thing where like we propose the extraction of the presenters. 'Cause I think the problem is now that the presenters are basically hard-coded inside the handlers. So you have to test them via the handler. Maybe there is a proposal for refactoring that extracts them as separate interfaces and that mocks them in the handler tests and tests them like individually.
Yeah, I want to go back to the first thing you said though about would it be tragic in a diplomacy breakdown if we did this. Like I think one thing to help that would be, I know you don't want to discuss on Slack, but just to like broadcast the intent of the proposal on Slack. Hey, we're going to be writing a proposal that says these like 3 things, and that might at least like forewarn some people so they're not caught off guard or anything. I think part of the issue is just like the proposals are big and like it's not inaccurate to say that there's like a lot of effort and thought put into them. So like when you see a big one come and you don't have any prior context or are aware of it, then it feels like more of like this is a decision and less of a discussion. And I think even though it should be a discussion, it's not always clear. So I think maybe just like a quick Slack thing saying, hey, this is going to be coming would do some.
Yeah, I guess there is some inertia as well. Like you write a proposal, and if that's the starting point for the conversation, then you can get just so far from it. You can't delete the whole thing and rewrite it, right?
Right.
So by writing what I'm scared of is, okay, if I write a proposal, it's kind of a way of basically, putting a heavy weight on my opinion, and then it's on you to shift the thing towards you and not the other way around. I don't want that to happen, but like at the same time, I feel like we're a bit paralyzed now, where like no proposal is happening, nothing is being. In the meantime, people make PRs. Some people run the integration tests and not the end-to-ends. Some people write the end-to-ends and not the integration. So it's like we keep diverging, and like the more we wait, the more reconciliation will be needed to get to converge to something uniform.
Why don't we start with the heart of it, right? Which sounds to me like let's get the integration tests figured out. Like why we use them or when we use them or things like that. Maybe we start there. I don't know. I mean, to me that feels like the first step is like let's figure out the integration test. Let's have a conversation specifically around what we want to do with this strategically, and then move on to the next one after that. I don't know if that sounds a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good if the proposal we write is focused. So maybe stuff like the presenter stuff, maybe we don't need to talk about it. And
yeah, I think
we don't want to talk about the controllers. We don't want to talk about a bunch of things.
Yep.
It might be good in a proposal to just, and apart from describing the end state, we want maybe describe the steps of how we're going to get there, because I think that's there's like if we're saying, okay, we're going to scrap these integration tests, that represents a lot of work, and a lot of other work's going to happen while that work's going on. So like what does that mean in the interim? Like, are we deprecating those things? Are we not deprecating?
Yeah, maybe it's
sure.
not a bad idea to say, okay, that deprecated. We don't write any new ones, and we set up chores to replace the existing ones if we feel like they will leave any gap, and then we slowly go through them and kill them.
I think that would get us quickly to possibly new opinions about the implications of getting rid of those tests. Like if we just say, all right, we're not going to write any new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if we tell people, oh, stop writing them, then people will start noticing maybe the things that they miss about them. Which kind of makes me think that maybe we should it could almost be interesting to stop writing them now before we decide, just to see just to try. and see like how frustrated it makes us, how big the gaps we feel are. Although honestly, like I have written software this way for many years and I've never felt like I've missed them. Like, yeah, I guess different people just work differently. Yeah, I mean, with the proposal out there, I guess people can just try and see. Like, let's try to implement the story without the integration, what the pimp, and then feedback into the proposal. We could write that explicitly in the proposal. Please try and see how it goes.
I'm gonna call time real quick. I guess to summarize, maybe what I'm hearing is like we do a, like I feel like the proposal might even delay this even more, but what if we just like said like let's try a 2-week experiment of end-to-end only or something, and then we can discuss that, how that felt. Does that sound fine to everybody?
Be interesting, yeah.
Okay. And then we can broadcast this at our stand-up today too.
Yeah, it could be interesting. And do we want to announce it on Slack or something?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Is that going to include if you're working on a story you migrate or no?
You migrate in existing integration test
Yeah.
end to end. I like what Julian said, where it's like a no new case for now. Otherwise, I feel like it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I just imagine a world where people are going to complain that now we've got half the testing and integration, half the testing and end-to-end, and they're confused and frustrated, and they're going to come out of it with a negative impression just because of that.
I think they'll have, on the flip side, they'll have a negative impression of, I spent all this story migrating tests over. Like, I think there's, yeah.
Maybe.
To be fair, over here, we've spent so many days just backfilling in end-to-ends.
Yeah.
So like we're kind of already there with the end-to-ends, like, because we are convinced of their value and we're just introducing them whenever we don't find them, which means even the simplest story, we end up spending days writing a robust end-to-end for them. So we're kind of already there with the end-to-ends.
I mean, the one benefit of doing the migration work is that you come out of it with a positive feeling of, I've made the testing better, at least for me personally.
Yeah, and we also have chores for them. We also have chores so that even if we don't have a chance to do them as part of the story, we have the chores.
Yeah, maybe I'm just projecting my perceived frustrations onto everyone else, but I think that's how I'm going to feel after 2 weeks if I don't migrate them. So, yeah.
All right. We got 2 minutes. Let's try to cover this last one. Hopefully 2 minutes is enough time for it.
Yeah, so just to say that we're going to do this tomorrow. I'm supposed to do it with Birdrock, but I haven't coordinated with him at all yet because last week I was in that Linux programming course and he's off today. I'm learning. So I might just not have like 0 chances of preparing this with him. So I might just do it by myself. Maybe, I don't know. I've started making slides and I have all tomorrow to finish them. I guess I'm going to post the version I have now on the channel so that maybe you can give me some feedback overnight and tomorrow I come back to it. And because I'm probably lacking lots of context on the bits we haven't worked on over here. So even in terms of like maybe ideas we have for the roadmap in the future, like things to add, and both like how the thing works in detail. Like I have an architecture diagram there, which is very simplified and I hope is correct, like at that level of abstraction, but it would be nice to have some extra couples of eyes on it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely give feedback and provide context.
Also in terms of topics, like I have basically a very brief history of previous attempts of porting CF-On-K8s. Then I have the vision, some words about the vision taken from the vision document that we had at the beginning. Then some architectures explaining basically how we're going to do it this time, and then talk about the future. I wonder if it will make sense, if a demo will make sense. Or do people think a demo could be feasible, could be reasonable? Would it be a wise choice, or do you think there's too it's too likely to fail. I don't know. I think it's gonna work, but like.
Yeah, it will work. I think.
So maybe I
think
can
demo
just demo
sounds good.
CF push. I can just show CF push, like logging in, showing the integration with the CLI and pushing would be nice. So if I manage to prepare it, I'm gonna sneak in a demo as well. And hopefully it's not supposed to last too long, right? Because I think we've talked about half an hour more or less plus questions, etc. So
Mhm.
I don't think I have to tell to talk a lot. It's more like these are the ideas behind it. This is how far we are. And then I'd rather answer questions about specifics than talk for half an hour uninterrupted.
Right. The board doesn't have, I don't think, expectations beyond what I've said, which is just that you all are going to give a demo and there'll be a Q&A, opportunity after that. So, that all sounds very good. Obviously, as thorough as you can be is great, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. In the time, if it takes 15 minutes or 45 minutes, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. We're 1 minute over. Had a lot of good discussion today. Let's feel free to bring some of this testing proposal discussion overflow over to Slack, but I feel like this 2-week experiment will be good. So, alrighty then. That's our working group for today. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.